up, friends? Welcome back to my channel. I hope you all are doing well. Today's video is going to be the long-awaited review of the newest addition to the VISEART Étendu line. This is the VISEART Le Marais palette. I am going to be doing a full review of this. We're going to be doing swatches, lots of comparisons. I have 3 looks for you guys today, and of course, I will let you know all of my thoughts about this palette at the end. So if you guys are interested in hearing some more about this beautiful palette, then keep watching. And if this happens to be your first time here, then welcome. My name is Sophia, and this is my channel where we talk about all things beauty and luxury. Every single week I upload new content and all the newest beauty releases, especially those that are a little bit more in like the higher end luxury Sephora brand. So if that is of interest to you, then you're in the right place, my friend. Hit that subscribe button to join the fam, and you can also click that notification bell to hear about every time I upload a new video. Do me a favor, if you like this video, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up. It really helps me out. And as always, I'll be linking everything that I mentioned in this video and anything that is on my face, anything that I'm wearing, in that description box down below. Most of my links are affiliate links, so if you would like to support my channel this holiday season, shopping through those links is a really great way to do so at no additional cost to you. All right, party people, let's get into this review. I'm super excited to be talking about this palette today. There have been so many holiday launches that I have been waiting to review this palette, and I've been playing around a lot with it, and I definitely have some thoughts. If you're not familiar with VISEART in general, they started off mostly and still are very much a makeup artist oriented brand. So you might not see as many like frills and as much, influencer marketing, etc., than you might from other brands that you find at Sephora. And what's nice about VISEART is that over time, what you're definitely seeing is that they're adding more additions to their product lineup, which very much is dominated by their fantastic eyeshadow formula that are a little bit more accessible to everyday consumers. Someone like me who loves makeup, loves luxury formulas, but I'm not always going to be using like a huge mega palette that's full of mattes. And that's kind of where this line, the Étendu line, comes into play. This is the size of the typical palette. I'll show you guys what the packaging for this one looks like up close so you can see. It is cardboard, but that being said, it's also very, very practical if you have a small makeup bag, if you travel a lot. I know for some, the packaging can be a little bit of a downside, but for me, I honestly do not mind it, especially for the price. These palettes retail for $44. You can pick them up on the VISEART website. They're also available at Beautylish. Sometimes they're available at Sephora. I have noticed that the VISEART product line, the selection, is very much dwindling at Sephora. I don't really know why that is. I think what is great about this Étendu line is that you kind of get the perfect size palette. And what VISEART also does very well are neutral palettes with pops of color, or sort of mixes of different types of neutrals. So I'll show you guys some close-ups of this palette, the Le Marais palette, and you'll quickly see there are a lot of neutrals in this palette, but they're also mixed up with some beautiful rich purples. And if you take a look at some of the Étendu products in their lineup, you'll notice a lot of the other palettes are like this as well. Neutrals with pops of color. This product is made in the USA, and it also has a 36-month shelf life, which I was kind of surprised by. Typically we see like 12 months, sometimes only 6 months if you're looking at like Glam and Dior. So I thought that 36 months was actually very impressive, and I love that from a luxury formula. Now, VISEART as a brand, they are called VISEART Paris. So Paris is kind of like their home-based city. And what you'll notice in a lot of their palettes is that they will pick different aspects of Parisian culture, different places, different neighborhoods in Paris, sometimes other areas within France, and they will create color stories that are inspired by those things. So with this palette, VISEART is trying to emulate the feeling, the ambiance of the beautiful neighborhood Les Marais, which is in Paris. And I believe it's in the 3rd arrondissement. It's one of my favorite places in Paris. It's such a beautiful neighborhood. It's full of art and culture, fantastic cafes, some of the best shopping in Paris. And I want to read the description about this palette here on the VISEART website so we can learn a little bit more about this palette. It says, Le Marais Étendu is a cornucopia of 12 lusciously rich hues in matte, metallic, and duochrome shimmer finishes, inspired by the maze of Le Marais, the charming cobbled streets, vibrant cafe courtyards, and where the beau monde have long rubbed shoulders with the bohemian. Warm woody browns, wine-rich mattes, and glinting gold coppers are a reflection of the cafes, ateliers, and hidden nooks where the artists have created for centuries. Nods to the brocades of couture ateliers and art galleries galleries are threaded throughout the palette with the most sumptuous jeweled shimmers and a duochromatic foil. I mean, the description alone makes this sound very tempting. Let's dive into some swatches. I do want to mention before I show you the swatches up close, VISEART is known in particular for their spectacular matte formula, but they don't swatch very well. So if you think that the swatches of the mattes look kind of patchy, it's because for whatever reason, they don't swatch very well. But when they apply, trust me, they apply like a dream. And then the formula for the shimmers tends to be rather foiled. It's not going to be as foiled as like a Danessa Myricks duochrome, but I do like the strong foiled impact that you get from the shimmers. So diving into the swatches, I'm first going to show you all of the matte shades so you can get a sense of what you're looking at in terms of that gradation of colors. So first up, we have the shade Rosier, a soft cantaloupe with a matte finish. Then we have Bretagne, a warm camel brown with a matte finish. Then we have Touraine, a mid-tone brown. Then we have Pletzel, a muted rouge brown. Then we have Cotier, a dark chocolate brown. And then we have Sévigné, a bright purple. So clearly when it comes to the mattes, you're mostly getting browns, you're mostly getting neutrals in an array of tones. So if you want to go more lighter or more darker, just kind of depending on your skin tone, you do have a lot of options. And then the only exception being that bright matte purple. Next, I'm going to break up the shimmers into the different color families. So starting off with the neutral shimmers. So first off, we have Verdun, a white gold with a shimmer finish. Then we have Mascaron, gold finch with a metallic finish. And finally, we have Charlotte, a gold copper with a metallic finish. I did look up how to pronounce all of these before I filmed this video, but I don't speak French, so apologies. I'm really trying. Hope I'm not butchering these names. Finally, I want to show you guys all of the purple shimmers that are in this palette. So first up, we have Flâner, a rose nude with a blue duochromatic finish, probably one of the coolest shades in the palette. Then we have Parmentier, a poppy red with a shimmer finish. And then we have République, an aubergine with a shimmer finish. Now that we have the swatches out of the way, let's get into some demos. I have 3 looks to show you today. The first look that I'm going to show you is going to be a natural look with the neutral shades that are in the palette. Basically, so I can show you guys, if you got this palette, you really could use it as like your everyday look if you are a neutral lover. The second demo is going to be very similar, except I'm going to be using the purpley shades in the palette. And then the third look is going to be this look that I did today, which is a little bit more of a glam look, taking it up a notch and using all of the tones that are in this palette. So let's dive in. Starting off with look number 1, this is going to be the soft and natural look. I dipped into Bretagne into the crease. You'll kind of notice a trend here with all of these looks. I love to start with this shade in the crease. It is the perfect tone, at least for my skin tone, just to kind of start off the look. Next, I went into that shade Mascaron, which is that beautiful bright yellowy kind of gold, and I applied that all over the lid. These metallic formulas from VISEART are so smooth and they're very opaque. It's kind of what I like about the formula. They are going to be a lot brighter than, say, you know, a Dior or maybe a Tom Ford, for example. But if you're somebody that doesn't like glitter, but you do like shine, if you love a beautiful opaque metallic, I feel like this is a really good in-between that suits a lot of people. I also took that same shade Mascaron and I put that along the lower lash line. I have no problem applying these to the eyes, as I kind of mentioned a second ago. These are not glittery, they're very smooth. So also if you have more mature eyes and you don't really like glitter, and if you want something that's gonna apply super smoothly, I think that this formula is very good for that as well. I went in with the lightest shimmer in the palette, which is called Verdun, and I applied that to the inner part of the lid, just adding like a little bit of brightness. Once again, this is a neutral look, so it's not gonna be groundbreaking, but it is gonna be really pretty, soft, and brightening to the face. Next, I used the shade Charlotte and applied that to the outer lid, just kind of blending that in. I know that this is a metallic shade, but I still think because it's darker, it looks good blended into that outer crease. And finally, I went into the red tone shade Parmentier and I applied that to the outer V with kind of a more stiffer pencil shaped brush. And then finally, I put on some mascara, and this is the final look. Comment down below, let me know if this is a neutral look that you think you would easily be able to recreate. Is this the kind of natural look that you guys like to wear? This palette is pretty warm tone, so I think a lot of the neutral looks that you're gonna get out of this, they are gonna be rather warm. All right, now it's time for look number 2. This is where I'm gonna utilize the purpley tones that are in this palette, and just like the other look, the first color that I'm gonna dip into and put into the crease is that shade Bretagne, so I just kind of applied that very smoothly into the crease. Then I went in with what is arguably maybe one of the coolest shades in this palette, which is called Flâner. That is the soft purpley duochrome. I think that this is the kind of shade that you can have this as a one and done. You could apply this all over the lid, maybe a little other color in the crease, maybe one of the mattes in the crease, and you could totally be out the door. I am gonna apply more colors, but I just wanna show you guys how beautiful this duochrome is on the lid, and it's not too crazy. It's a very wearable duochrome. Then I dipped into that beautiful deep aubergine color, which is called Republique, and I blended that on the outer lid with a fluffy brush. You can absolutely build this up if you have a deeper skin tone. I went a little bit softer by using a fluffier brush, but just want to mention, you can definitely build this up to add some depth if you wanted to. I also took those two shades, Flaner and Republique, and I applied those to the lower lash line to kind of match up what I did on the lid. And then we have to use the bright purple matte, which is called Sévigné, and I applied that to the outer V. I tried to use a stiffer brush to kind of build this color up a little bit. I will say, if you're layering this color on top of other colors, it's not going to be as bright as when you swatch it on a bare hand. I think that you need to use a stiffer brush if you want to really pack it on. I also would say, purples are pretty hard to formulate. I think that this is probably the one color in the palette that it doesn't perform as well as other purples that I've seen from VISEART. Once again, I think that these kinds of colors are hard to formulate. So I think that you need to work with this color a little bit, use good quality brushes, really build it up using a stiffer, more dense kind of brush if you want to get the same color payout. If you want a soft look, then you're fine. But if you want this to be super duper bright, you might just have to spend a little bit of time building it up. So I want to call that out because I know it's kind of like one of the standout shades in this palette from a color story perspective. And finally, I went into the lightest shade, which is called Verdun, on the inner corner just to brighten things up. I put on my mascara, I finished up the look, and this is look number 2, the purpley look. Comment down below, let me know, do you prefer the more neutral look or do you prefer the more purpley look? But if you prefer both, you are in luck, my friend, because look number 3, like I said, is going to be me combining a lot of these colors, which is the look that I have today. So let's dive into that. Surprise, surprise, I started off the look by going in with Bertin in the crease, but then I dipped into that beautiful bronze shade, which is called Charlotte, and I put that all over the lid. Oh, I just love this rich metallic brown. I know it's not the most groundbreaking of colors, but I feel like this is the kind of color that looks so flattering on everybody, on every skin tone. I also took that same color, Charlotte, and I applied that to the lower lash line. Then I dipped into Republique, which is that deep aubergine shimmer, and I applied that to the outer lid with a fluffy brush. This is where I'm starting to build up a little bit more depth. Similar to the last look, I dipped into the bright purple Sévigné and I applied that to the outer V with a pointier brush. Once again, this is how you're going to get a little bit more color payoff, but because I'm layering it on top of Republique, it's just going to add a little bit more of a purple tone. It's not going to be super duper bright purple like it looks in the pan. One of the things that I love about this palette is the juxtaposition of shades. You have these beautiful, more orangey tone golds that contrast so nicely with the rich purple. So I wanted to try and create a little bit more of that effect. So I went into this shade right here, which is called Mascaron, and I applied that to the inner corner. I really wanted it to be a bright yellow gold pop of shimmer that contrasts with the beautiful purples. Next, I used that beautiful duochrome Flaner and I applied that to the center of the lid, almost trying to connect the purpley tones with the golds and also adding a little bit of brightness to the center of the lid. Finally, I applied some dark brown liner and I used the shade Courtier, excuse my pronunciation. I used that to kind of blend out the liner and make it a little bit softer. And then I applied some mascara and this is the final look. How do you guys think I did? I tried to combine as many of the shades as possible to show you guys you can get a very complete look. You can layer a lot of these colors together. And if you don't feel like combining all of them, or maybe you're having just kind of like a lazy day or you want a neutral day, you can create really beautiful, soft, everyday looks with just the neutrals, with just the purples, or you can kind of mix them together a little bit if you want something more glam. So comment down below and let me know which look was your favorite. All right, friends, now we're gonna get into some comparisons. If you are new here, I typically do a lot of comparisons just to help you understand if you need the palette. And the first couple that I'm gonna show you guys are other palettes that are in the VISEART collection, especially because a lot of times you guys, you're interested in purchasing VISEART, but you're not really sure which palette you want to pick up, or if you already have some of these palettes, you want to see if this one is different enough. So don't worry, friends, I got you. The first palette that I'm going to show you a side-by-side of is with the VISEART Minxette Entendu. This is one of my favorite palettes of all time. I love neutral, warm-toned palettes, and you can definitely see some similarities between these palettes. I think the biggest differences here is that in Le Marais, you're getting more purples and golds. Like I said, you get that juxtaposition of shades, whereas with Minxette, it's more like orangey and peach. It's a little bit more softer. Minxette is a very soft, sexy, sophisticated warm tone palette, whereas I think with Le Marais, you're getting more of that contrast of shades. Also, if you look closely, the mattes are also very different amongst the palettes. Sure, they are neutrals, but the undertones between them are different. So I think that these palettes, they are different enough, but if you already have Minxette as a warm tone palette, Le Marais might not be the next one that you want to add to your collection. Or if you're looking at Le Marais and you're like, I like it, but I don't really want all those purple shades, then I think Minxette is kind of your next best option. Next up, I have a side-by-side up against the Paris Loveletter palette. This palette is noticeably lighter and also softer. I think that this is a good option if you're looking at the Le Marais palette and you're thinking, you know what, it's just a little too dark for me, it's a little too warm for me. If you want something that's just a good standard soft neutral, I think Paris Loveletter is more of the way to go. Because Le Marais has some purples in it, I do want to show you a comparison with the Violet Entendu from VISEART. I definitely think that the undertones of the purples in each of these palettes are pretty different. The Violet palette, it's more of that violet tone, whereas the Le Marais palette, it's more of that rich aubergine eggplant type of undertone. Next up, I have a comparison with one of the other new palettes from VISEART. This is the London Étoile palette, and I think that this little palette in and of itself, the color story is a little bit more interesting and unique. It's also, however, much grungier, and you don't really have the option for that perfect neutral look. You kind of have to commit to the color story. You have to commit to the deep aubergine purples. You have to commit to that mossy green. So there's some neutrals in there. It's not a super colorful palette, but I definitely think it's a different vibe from the one Le Marais. Next up, we have the VISEART Solstice palette. This, in addition to the Paris Loveletter, is one of my go-to neutral palettes, not only from VISEART, but in my entire makeup collection. And I think that this is a good option if all you want is neutrals. Like if you're drawn to the neutral shimmers in Le Marais, but you don't want any of the purples, this is good. Also, this is not as warm. It's not going to be as warm as Le Marais, and it still has like that similar really pretty duochrome shade. Finally, the next couple comparisons that I have for you guys are ones that you requested or ones from other brands that I think that you guys should know about. And the first one, I thought this was a great suggestion. This is Tom Ford African Violet. This palette is a little bit hard to come by. In fact, I think I purchased mine on eBay and I don't see it at Sephora anymore. I think that these are very similar color stories. I think the biggest difference here is like the Tom Ford one is only 4 shades, and the one shimmer that is in the palette, it's pretty glittery. So if you don't like as much glitter, I think the VISEART is a good option. There's some slight differences between the tones. Overall, very similar color story, similar concept, but the VISEART does give you more options. I also received some requests to compare the Le Marais palette up against the new Chanel Ombre de Lune quad. This is part of their holiday release, and I think it's because a lot of people felt like this was a very warm tone palette, but when I compare these, I really don't think that they are that similar. In fact, the Le Marais palette almost makes it look like the Ombre de Lune is really more neutral. It's not really that warm at all. If you don't like warm tones, you really shouldn't be purchasing the Le Marais palette. And I think that these two palettes, they're definitely different enough where you could have both, and I don't think you're really gonna get the same looks at all. Take a look at this next comparison. This is one that I thought of when I was going through my collection. This is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette. Throwback! I know mine looks very well loved because it is very well loved. I love this palette, and I think that there's some similarities between these because you're getting those neutrals mixed with kind of purpley tones. The biggest difference though is that the Anastasia Beverly Hills, it is more mauve leaning. It also is a little bit more romantic, but I think that it is once again similar because you're getting neutrals with pops of color. Yo, check out this next one that I found for you guys. This is the best dupe that I found, and I'm very proud of myself. This is from Charlotte Tilbury, and unfortunately, I don't know if you can still get this, but I'll try and find it and link it down below if I can. This was one of her limited edition holiday releases, and it was called Bejeweled Eyes to Mesmerize. Oh my gosh, these are so similar. These are so similar. Okay, there's a lot of very similar shades in here. No wonder I like both of these palettes, because they have very similar color stories. And I also think that with Charlotte Tilbury, the formula isn't that far off. I think that the shimmers that she has, they're a little bit more high shine foils compared to the VISEART, but honestly, it's really not that different. And even though this was limited edition and you might not be able to get it anymore, I know that a lot of you have this in your collection. So I just want to show it to you so you can decide, you know, maybe you don't want to get the Le Marais, and maybe there's another Entendu palette that you've had your eyes on, and I helped you with your decision. Finally, I have two comparisons with Natasha Denona. You guys requested these. The first one is with the Natasha Denona Midi Sunrise palette. You know, there's some similarities between these as well. I think in general, the Sunrise palette, it's more peachy and yellowy options included, and we don't really get that in the Le Marais palette. I think that the Le Marais palette, it reminds me of an autumn harvest, whereas the Natasha Denona Sunrise palette, it reminds me more of a sunrise, more of like that burst of sunshine. It's a little bit more summertime to me, whereas the Le Marais is more of an autumnal vibe to me. Lastly, I have the Natasha Denona Sunset palette. First we had the Sunrise, now we have the Sunset. And you know what? I think that there are a lot of neutrals in here that are comparable. I think a lot of the shimmers and metallics between these two palettes are similar. But in the Natasha Denona Sunset, you're obviously not getting those purple tones. And I think some of the mattes as well, they have very different undertones. So I think if you had both the Sunrise and the Sunset palette, you could probably create a lot of similar looks to the Le Marais. But at the end of the day, you are not getting that like deep, rich, beautiful aubergine kinds of shades. All right, friends, I hope that all this has been helpful so far. Now it is time for my final thoughts. I'm going to break down the things that I like about this palette, and then I'll also let you guys know what are some of the considerations. My goal here is to help you figure out if this is going to be the right palette for you. Who do I recommend this for? So starting off with the things that I like about it, number one, I think that the quality is great. I think that if you're familiar with the VISEART formula and you like the VISEART formula, then you're going to enjoy this. As I mentioned before, I think the only shade that I sometimes struggle with a little bit is the bright purple shade. And that's because I'm usually layering it on top of maybe some of the dark purples in here or on top of the browns. And so I'm not gonna get as much color payoff, but I bet if you put on an eyeshadow primer and you just went in with that first, you would get a much better payoff. But other than that, I really like the formula. In addition, I also like the color story. This is a beautiful, warm, autumnal, rich color story, and I like warm tones. If you don't like warm tones, you're not gonna like this. It's quite warm. It's even warmer than like the new Chanel Quad, which a lot of people said, this is too warm for me. I just don't really care for it. And I kind of feel like cool tones are sort of having a bit of a moment right now. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, VISEART really excels in giving us neutral color stories with pops of color. We have a pretty like neutral purple area. We have a very neutral brown neutrals area. And then we've got sort of these two colors we can play with. We've got the little duochrome. And then we have this bright, beautiful gold, which is a neutral, but up against the other colors gives a little bit more impact. So I think that this is a really stunning, beautiful color story. Now, that being said, when I think about the considerations you need to have for this palette, when we talk about the color story being beautiful, it is beautiful, but it's not particularly groundbreaking. You guys saw, like, I have some other similar palettes in my collection. They might not be exact, but I have, you know, the Charlotte Tilbury, the Natasha ones. There are some similarities there. I don't think that there's anything super similar to this in the VISEART collection. Comment down below if I'm missing something. I have a lot of their palettes, and I don't think I have anything quite similar to this. I think if you're shopping amongst the Entendu line, this is gonna be good for you if you're somebody that wants something rich and warm and neutral, but you still want that versatility with the pops of purple and the pops of color, which you don't really get from Mink Set. But going back to what I was saying, the color story isn't groundbreaking. VISEART is kind of famous for putting together a color story that has those pops of colors. And so that pop of color, a lot of times it gives like the illusion of a more interesting color story or the illusion of something more unique. If I were to just cover these two shades up, the palette probably wouldn't pop as much in your mind when you were looking at it. So that's the biggest call out that I give, is like really think about whether or not you have these shades already. One critique that I do have for this palette is that I think I would have liked to eliminate one of these mattes, maybe one of the more medium toned ones, and I would have replaced it with another purple matte, because the only purple matte that we get is this one. And then you do have this beautiful deep purple, but it's a shimmer. I wish that we had had this tone, but in a matte, similar to the London Etoile palette. I think there's a purpley matte in that palette. Yeah, I probably would have gotten rid of this tone and I would have replaced it with a matte that was more in this kind of purpley color family. I think that small little edit would make this palette a lot more versatile. And don't forget, if you do have other VISEART palettes, you can take out these little pans. They are magnetic and you can always swap out the colors. So in summation, I like this palette. I think it's really cute. I don't think that this is gonna be my favorite Entendu palette because they're all just so good. They're some of my favorite, most used palettes in my entire collection. I should do a ranking video. Comment down below if you want me to do a ranking video of all my Entendu palettes, but I still really like this. I think that this is gonna be great, especially for people that haven't tried VISEART before, so you don't have any like neutral palettes from VISEART and you like warm tones. I think that's gonna be perfect for you. I also think that this is gonna work for a lot of skin tones, both super fair like me and also very deep, because it is quite pigmented and the metallics really pop on any skin tone. So yeah, friends, those are all of my thoughts. I try and give you guys the most realistic depiction of these products as possible. So just in case you have different tastes than me, you can look at it for yourself and make the call on whether or not it's going to be a good fit for you. But enough about what I think. I want to hear about what you guys think. Sound off in those comments down below and let me know if you guys picked this up. Are you debating it? I know that VISEART is probably going to be having a Black Friday sale pretty soon, so I'd be interested to hear if this is one of the palettes you guys think you're going to pick up, or are there other ones from the lineup that you guys are interested in? Comment down below and let me know. Also, if you like this video, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up. I would very much appreciate that. I'll be linking all the products that I talked about in that description box down below. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And with that, friends, I hope that you are having a fantastic day and I will see you in my next one. Goodbye.